let's get to the good stuff. As I said before, it is a huge honor to share the stage with you all this morning. We are here this morning with our esteemed founder, Clark McQuaid, and the POW pioneers, the women who helped make this organization what it is today, and without whom we would not be here celebrating a 10th anniversary, and we would not be continuing to champion gender equality through the arts here in Thanet. What an incredible group of people, and what an incredible legacy that you have created for us. So I'm going to ask the panel to introduce themselves in a moment, but let me set the stage with a little bit of feminist theory from one of the best and one of the brightest, Bell Hooks. So she says in this book, feminism is for everybody. She says, imagine living in a world where there is no domination, where all are not alike or even always equal, but where a vision of mutuality is the ethos shaping our interaction. Imagine living in a world where we can all be who we are, a world of peace and possibility. Feminist revolution alone will not create such a world. We need to end racism, class elitism, imperialism, but it will make it possible for us to be fully self-actualized people, able to create beloved community, to live together, realizing our dreams of freedom and justice, living the truth that we are all created equal. Come closer. See how feminism can touch and change your life and all our lives. Come closer and know firsthand what feminist movement is all about. Come closer and you will see feminism is for everybody. Right. And with that, setting our stage, hello panelists. It's so good to be here with you all. I'd love if we can move down the line, you can all introduce yourselves. Jan, can I ask you to start and just tell us a little bit about you?
Hello, I'm Jan Ryan, and I'm one of the first people to get involved in POW, responding to Chris's Facebook post, I think. And the reason that I kind of thought, oh, this is the thing for me, is that I'd already been general manager of Women's Theatre Group, and so I'd worked with women's stuff, and I'd just finished doing festivals. I'd just finished doing a big African festival around the UK. So I do festivals as well, so women's stuff and festivals, that's for me. So that was my drive to get involved in POW, I think, right from the beginning. And now I'm director of ARC. So welcome to ARC as well. It's lovely to have you all.
Thank you for having us here at ARC. What an incredible space. We're so lucky. Right, Chris.
I'm Christina Clark McQuaid, and you're going to hear me talk for about 5 minutes after everyone else has introduced themselves, so I'm not going to say any more now.
I'm Sally Childs. I got involved because I was literally dragged to the first meeting because I got the flu at the time, but really didn't want to go, but I'm glad I did. And I think I was one of the only certainly there weren't many of visual artists, of which I am. I'm a visual artist and curator. And I guess the reason I was interested was because my background before I moved to Margate, I was the visual arts manager for an organisation called New Greenham Arts, which was on Greenham Common. And it was kind of interesting that I ended up there, because prior to that, I had been in the States and was involved in the anti-nuclear scene over there in a very small group in this weird place called Bakersfield. And in fact, I'd organised one of the women from Green Common to come to the States to talk about what was going on. So it was a kind of, strange circular thing. So that's me.
I'm Steph Dickinson, and now I'm a songwriter and musician, but at the time I was leading a charity called Pie Factory Music. And I think my interest in getting involved at the beginning was partly because I really love and respect Chris, and anything she does I'm interested in and I want to support, and also because I'm deeply committed to things that are rooted in community and things that are rooted in local place. And having grown up in Thanet, I wanted to just kind of bring that perspective and passion for young people as well. So that was my initial reason for getting involved.
Hi, I'm Michelle Thomas. I'm not from Thanet, and I hadn't been here that long, I think, when I saw Chris's call out on Facebook. I'm a PR and marketing
person by profession, but also a bit of a social justice warrior. And I think that was really what attracted me to it. I went along really just because I was curious and wanted to see what was involved, and then got involved.
Wonderful. Thank you all for being here. Chris, can I turn it over to you to do a little intro to...
Yes, but do you mind if I mention the other three?
Yes, of course you can. Yes, of course.
There were
Yes.
three other founders, three other founding team members. One, Lana Van Zetter, who owned Margate House, sadly died, I can't remember how many years ago, but she was very crucial member of the team. Brigitte, I've forgotten her surname, Baden-Rennie, is now in Australia, but she sent a lovely message, which is out in the foyer section, because she was in theatre, music theatre. And Kate Hancock, who ran the volunteers and is around, but she couldn't leave her work this morning, so unfortunately she can't be part of the panel. But I just wanted to mention those three equally important women. And I'm going to, please excuse me, I'm going to read some of this. I know it's my own memory, but if I don't read it, I shall not keep to the script and I'll be talking for at least half an hour. And I've been given 5 minutes, so I'm not going to be timed. I'm going to roll back to 1980, and probably before many of you were born. In 1980, I joined a women's group for the first time in West London, led by the WEA. Do you all know what the WEA? Workers' Educational Association. Where I learned to see the role of women in a very different light from the one I was in, which was mother of 3 children under 8. We were inspired by writers like Betty Friedan, Germaine Greer, Sheila Rowbottom, and we met the Spare Rib Collective. We became political, we went on marches, we didn't burn any bras. I've kind of split this into sections, so if anyone's thinking of starting something, there's always going to be a sort of route or a journey. So the lead up to POW was, I moved to East Kent in 1987 and worked in arts management roles for a number of organisations, including 10 years at Canterbury Festival and about 10 years at Thanet District Council, where I was the Arts Development Officer. While I was at Thanet Council, I devised an art strategy which focused on regeneration through the arts. It had not been done before in any of East Kent. This included offering business advice and EU-funded grants to emerging creative industries in Thanet. Sadly, we no longer can do the EU-funded grants. And this is when I realised how much creativity there is and was around Thanet and how little it was being publicised. Then came the inspiration. In March 2015, Turner Contemporary commissioned an artist called Roberta Butter to put on a 2-day event creating feminist-driven artwork to commemorate International Women's Day. On the 8th of March, he organised a small event outside the Theatre Royal where 2 suffragettes spoke in 1910. I think Iris was probably there. And this inspired me to... This inspired me to investigate how this seedling of celebrating International Women's Day could be developed. And I actually found out yesterday, I put that hope on a Facebook post on the 6th of March 2015. I'd completely forgotten that. And what I said was, I personally intend to make IWD Thanet a bigger event next year with the help of the many supportive women I have met over the last few months. There's lots to say against Facebook, but actually it's pretty good for reminding us of what we did. Mm-hmm. So then came the research, and I will say, if anyone's thinking of starting anything, it's crucial to research what already exists, because, you know, we need to find the niches. So between March and autumn 2015, I did 3 sort of quite, what felt like fairly important things. I contacted all the venue managers across Thanet that I knew because I'd worked for the council, to find out if they'd be interested in offering us their venues to host these events. And I will say most of them were men, but it was a very positive response. And the reason it was positive is because it would have brought in new audiences for them. And Thanet was in a bit of a... It wasn't declining, but it was at a lower level, shall we say. I also checked the number of Arts Council grants that were being given out in East Kent, and particularly Thanet, and it was almost none. So that was good for the funding. And I then found that there was nowhere else in Kent or even the South East, apart from the Women of the World Festival in London, were putting on any kind of art event or festival that was more than just a one-off thing. We had a USP, a unique selling point. So then what you have to do is capture the zeitgeist. So in mid-November, I put up a Facebook call out for interested artists, not artists, of all genres, and was met with a brilliant response, including this wonderful women sitting here with me. So I set up a doodle poll for a date, which was the 15th of November 2015. We held an inaugural meeting at Lana Van Zetter's place, Margate House, and which she offered free of charge. And I had prepared a number of options. I'm not quite sure whether they're are they outside in the foyer, Darren? The options. Anyway, I prepared a number of options at this meeting. In what we would do to start the festival.
It's just outside the foyer by the phone.
Oh, brilliant, because I don't have to read through them.
Festival, and they're all there.
You'll see, if you look at them, there are a number of options, starting at simple and ending at complicated. And guess which one was chosen? So then it was all about creating a team and building trust. And I think, again, building trust is one of the most important things. If you're working with anyone else, you need to trust each other. So 8 of us, 5 of us are here, formed a management team, and we all worked voluntarily initially. I wouldn't recommend it highly, but if you really feel strongly about something, you might have to do it for nothing for a little bit. And crucial for the team was to be non-hierarchical, because everyone had a valuable and valid role. So we set up 4 subgroups, each headed by at least 1 team member, to manage the different art forms. Then it became all about collaborative working and breaking down barriers. So at a later open meeting, it was unanimously agreed to offer an opportunity for artists and venues across Thanet to programme their own International Women's Day related event, to be marketed by POW under an umbrella brand, POW obviously. This would demonstrate collaboration and geographical cross-working across Thanet, which was not easy in Thanet. Working Margate, Broadstairs, Ramsgate, Birchington, has always been difficult. So it's break down geographical boundaries as well as all the others. The festival vision, and I'm nearly there were 3 main strands at that time. 1, that the festival should celebrate the creative work of women and girls. 2, that it should raise the profile of International Women's Day in Thanet. And 3, that the festival should take place across the 3 main towns of Thanet. We succeeded, amazingly, in being awarded a small Arts Council grant to cover marketing costs. And I think one of the original brochures might be out in the foyer.
2.
Oh, 2. Please don't steal them. Venues included working with flagship cultural buildings like the Turner Contemporary and Dreamland and Theatre Royal, which was open at the time. And they offered their venues free of charge or at a very low cost. And so a fairly substantial programme was put in place for March 2016, bearing in mind this started in November 2015, properly with the team. The fact that we actually got a festival together by March 2016, I think, was pretty amazing. I couldn't have done it without these amazing women. And I don't know how long that took, but I hope it wasn't.
That was perfect. Hopefully all you kind of burgeoning movement builders out in the audience have been taking diligent notes, because there in 5 minutes is how to start an iconic women's movement, and you heard it here from Chris herself. So now I think it's an opportunity to hear from all of you around what is some of the impact that POW has had. What are some of the key milestones and success stories that you want to kind of share with the group, and what influence do you feel POW has had on feminist arts? Does anyone feel compelled to start?
Gosh, that's a really big topic.
It's a big topic.
I mean, as Chris was talking, I was thinking, 2016, was that the year, that first year, was that the year that we did the Talking Heads?
Yes.
At Turner?
Which you put together.
But that was such an amazing event, because we put together about 30 different women, I think. It was a lot of a lot of people. I mean, people that we knew, because we had no money. So it was all about doing everything on a shoestring.
Yeah.
And we put together, you know, one woman had run a folk club in Montreal, which had given Bob Dylan one of his first gigs. Another woman who was the rabbi's wife was a taekwondo expert. You know, they were all kind of really, really quirky characters. And then the audience had randomly were given like different cards, and they had like, I think it was 10 minutes at each table or to talk to a certain number of women. So not everybody got to talk to everyone, but it was a real mixer, and it was a real kind of low cost and very, very impactful, I think, way of kind of involving a lot of people. So that for me is one of the things that really kind of stands out, and also kind of set the tone of how POW was really about celebrating all these people who had done all this amazing stuff. So I think that was really important.
I think that's about harnessing what women and girls can offer.
Yeah.
And that's, in a way, that's the crux of the festival, is that you have to find it and then you harness it. And it's very difficult because, I mean, from my point of view, one of the achievements, apart from the funding, which is always hard work, is exactly that, harnessing the influence of the flagship cultural organisations and getting them on board. And that I accept. I don't know whether Rosanna's in the room, but hello, Rosanna. You know, I know it's not as easy now to be working with places like the Turner Contemporary because everybody's worried about their income. And the thing about this is you have to override it somehow. It's all very well for me to say that, I know.
No, we worked with about 50 different venues last year, so we're still across Thanet. We're just spreading ourselves out a bit this year with funding.
But it's still a lovely programme this year. I wanted to say at the end, when you were going to ask about, you asked about POW 10 years on, I just want to say, one, it's still here.
Yes!
And well done. And two, it's a brilliant programme because it's right across the genre, it's right across the age groups. I'm dying to see Age Against the Machine. I'm coming to that, I wouldn't miss that. And it's varied, and it's being reduced for obvious reasons, but well done, because it's a lovely programme this year, and well done to you for allowing the building to be used,
Well,
I mean, in a very reasonable fashion.
I hope so. I don't know, Martha did that. Wearing two hats.
Yeah, and I think for me, one of the most impactful things about POW was suddenly having a space to listen to other women. And for me personally, I just enjoyed listening to some of, certainly these folks' stories of feminism before I was born, and also giving me a language for it. So I think in my, I didn't really know very much about feminism, to be honest, before I met some of these women, and I think we shared values, and I just didn't have a language to sort of talk about it. So I think, yeah, that was really important. And also, like, sorry, this is a bit more personal, but at the time of POW kind of being set up, I was becoming a mother for the first time, and it was also incredible to be around women at that time, powerful, strong, kind, incredible women, and that for me was really, that community part of it was really impactful.
Yeah, I can hear in that the intergenerational component of POW that feels like it has always been present, and I think that being able to be in a feminist dialogue with the women who have come before you and the women who are going to come after you and the girls who are going to come after us is a huge part of what makes POW as special as it is. Wonderful.
I just have a memory of me and Chris putting up banners in a howling gale. We had cable ties, and we were on the seafront, and you know how windy it can get at the best of times, and it was hailing, and the thing was whipping, and we were just like, come on, we can do this. And that was a fun day. I mean, that's when you're really doing everything on a shoestring. It's like you can't afford to pay anyone to do stuff, so you just roll up your sleeves and crack on. And I think that was one of the nicest things about doing it, was that we didn't have a team of people where we could go, you go and do that. You know, everyone was hands on deck, and I think that's why it worked in a way, because we did all just
that was the
get on with it.
The non-hierarchical. But I also want to say that was part, and it was my fault making Michelle come, and it was a blizzard, but it was Broadstairs, and I was so determined to get something in Broadstairs because it's so much more difficult. So it was Broadstairs seafront. We were tying blasted banners, and it stayed. It did.
I think my fond memory is working with Lana Vanzetta, actually, who was a bit of a force to work with, to say the least. And she was still trying to decide what she was going to do with Margate House, but that first year, the bottom part of the building, she turned into a gallery of sorts, which was a lovely space. I love curating shows that aren't actually in galleries, that are in odd places. So that was the first challenge. And then she had the idea, because her background was photography and moving image. She wanted to have an open exhibition of moving image. So it was called Moving Image Margate, and we advertised it, and we had, a lot of people who wanted to be in that exhibition. We did the selection. But I did say to Lana right from the beginning, I am not a technical person, right? I'm a curator, but I don't know much about technical stuff, so you're going to have to find the equipment and the people to run this equipment. And we nearly fell out over this at the end, because I had to point it out to her. I did say this to you, Lana. But somehow or other, she managed to pull some people together, and we cobbled this exhibition. It was cobbled, very much so, but it was great, I think. It was a lovely exhibition, a real mix of work.
Yeah.
So that was my fond, that was my fond memory.
I can hear in all of your memories the triumphs and the challenges, right?
Yeah.
That come with running a festival on a shoestring budget in a sector or two sectors, arguably, right? Both women and girls and the arts that are challenged from a funding point of view and from an attention point of view. So that's probably a segue into a question around what are some of the challenges that you faced when you were first starting out, and how did you overcome them for those in the audience who might want to be starting a movement of their own? What can they take away from the challenges you experienced? Big sigh out.
Well, it's not even an elephant in the room. Everybody knows it. It's the funding.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's why it's
completely
important to do your research, because there are funding. We discovered Rosa, which has, I don't know whether anyone's worked with Rosa Woman to Woman Fund. And that money comes from the tax that's taxed on sanitary ware, like tampons and sanitary towels. I don't know whether they're still taxed, but that fund came from those taxes, and they were very, very generous to us. So it's about finding just that something that might fit with whatever you're doing. And it's difficult, but we managed it. Ticket pricing was a bit of a thing, because we wanted to do as much that was free or very cheap as we could. But obviously, if you're asking for funding, you have to have proof that you've got
match
income
funding.
as well. Yes, match funding particularly. Getting in the new audiences, that's another challenge. And if you're going to continue, you can't just continue as an organisation. You have to become something. And my hardest challenge, and I've never had a harder challenge, despite my 3 grown-up children and 7 grandchildren, was setting ourselves up as a charitable incorporated organisation, a CIO. If you are going to grow, I don't know if anyone's thinking of this now, but at the end of the day, you're going to have to become a charity or some. I mean, Lana actually convinced us to start out as a, I think it was called a
CIC.
a CA or something.
CIO.
That was it.
CIO.
And then we became a proper charity. Which
No,
is,
we always were a CIO.
No,
we started as a CIC.
Yeah,
CIC
first. CIO.
because
Yeah.
to get money in.
It's about having a bank account as much.
Yes,
as
it was.
Yeah.
And then you needed trustees, so then you had them. you
Yeah.
know. So there's lots of challenges, but, if you're passionate about what you're doing, the challenges become surmountable. I think that's probably. Oh, the other thing is, in terms of what you were saying earlier about influencing on feminist arts, the safe space. The venues have to be a safe space. And so we use non-venue. We use a lot of typical non-venue types. I mean, I remember we did Wink the Other Eye and the Lido. in the
Yes.
Meadow building, didn't we?
Yes.
Not sure. No, we'll put that one down.
Stories we told in the bar.
Yeah, definitely.
We're doing our Waldorf and Statler bit.
This was our joke when we were co-directors.
If anyone watched the Muppets, you'll know who Waldorf and Statler
we're
are.
Waldorf and Statler.
Constantly heckling. So yeah, I think it's about the venue, looking at the venues, and it's just this thing about the safety, and that sort of leads to empowering the women of all ages, women and girls of all ages. So there was lots to think about, and I won't say for 1 minute we knew it all at the beginning.
Yeah.
And it's a continuing journey, isn't it?
If I can pick up on a couple of things that you've said there, I think because ARC, we're also a CIO. We started as a CIC and have become a CIO. I think when you're a CIO and you have a charity number, it opens up more funding streams for you, which as a CIC, I mean, there's swings and roundabouts. But the other thing I think to say is that it was hard for us to get funding, but I acknowledge that it's got much, much, much harder to get funding now.
Yeah.
So, I think we're all operating now in a really, really difficult financial climate, particularly for the arts. I think it's really, really
Well, it's harder to
difficult.
get funding and people have less disposable income.
Yes.
So that's a
Yes.
perfect storm of difficulty.
Yeah.
And one just maybe more of a social challenge that comes to mind from a specific example, but I remember we were putting on some coding for girls workshops, and I really wanted to find a female coder to run the workshops, and I put out a post on Facebook. And I got so much backlash from asking for a female character.
It was the same when we looked for video, someone to film the festival, and people were like, you can't just specify it's a woman.
Yeah.
And it's, well,
And I think it's something about when you're working.
And we will.
But I think it's something about when you're working. It certainly, with what we were doing with POW in the early days, it was about raising awareness and educating people, because there wasn't that much conversation about feminism and about the rights of women and girls at the same time. So I think it's also about being ready for some backlash when you're working in an area that is new, and then also thinking about, okay, I'm feeling the pressure of that with all of my power and privilege, but then if you have further marginalisation, we need community. And I actually remember MP's Good stepping in to she's a composer in Ramsgate. I think she's got some work being shown here actually. And she really supported me because she was like kind of used to it, which is terrible, but also very helpful. So I think it is that social side as well of having the community around.
And that sort of tiresome, I mean, it's still, I saw Kathy Bales was supports, she posted about the festival, and it shows up on Facebook, and you still get these men just go, oh God, when's International Men's Day? And it's like, oh, for goodness sake, it's not the flex you think it is. And it's like, we've been here for 10 years, and there's still, I think somebody posted on the recent poster, they'll get an hour away from the kitchen sink. And it's so boring. It really is.
It is so boring. It is so
and
boring.
it's like, we're still having these conversations.
Yeah, I think that speaks to the fact that we're still fighting, right? And that's why we're still fighting, because we're still getting these comments that say, get back in the kitchen and make me a sandwich. And you just go, it's 2025, folks. Like, let's move on from some of that. So, Steph, I want to pick up on something you talked about just a few minutes ago around community and collaboration, because what I can hear in all of your reminiscences and in your stories is the importance of network building, of building partnerships, of thinking geographically across the region, thinking about working with different types of venues. And in particular, Steph, maybe I'll start with you. I'd love to hear about POW's impact on youth in Thanet, because it feels like that's been quite an important growth journey over the last 10 years.
Yeah, and I think I was really encouraged right from the early days, because there was a conversation about how do we include young people from the very first meeting. And I think I think it has had a big impact on youth. Certainly in our journey at Pie Factory Music, we were kind of exploring some of these really interesting things with young people, and they were producing amazing work and being involved in the festival. But equally, I think the young people had an influence on POW, and I think it has to be both ways with any group.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited when I see like the Young Producers Programme that's happening now, and all the amazing work that's gone, you know, since I've been involved. But yeah, so I think there was something about actually going to young people and saying, what does it look like for you? Mm-hmm. It's different, you know, even 5-10 years beyond us, it is very different. And I think it was important to hear that and to give space for them to, like we did debates and all sorts of things, just to give space to that discussion and then let that influence the programming. But yeah, it's been, yeah, so sorry, I lost my train of thought. The impact certainly for us as an organisation was that we realised we need a regular girls programme.
Yes.
And that actually happened probably because of those first few years of POW.
Yeah.
So now Pie Factory has a regular girls programme, and it's really well established, but we realised we need that all year round.
Yeah, that constant dialogue I think is really important and speaks to that intergenerational component of feminist work, right? That we are always in a conversation up and down the generations to be learning from one another. Sally, I wonder if I could come to you to talk a little bit about community and collaboration. I'm respectful of the fact that you've been in so many different elements of feminist movement over the many years you've been in this work, and I'm curious your perspective.
Well, I wanted to go back actually to what we were talking about before, about I'd like to sort of do a call out for all of the volunteers that were involved, one of which became a friend of mine, because they were really important. And it's quite difficult to find volunteers.
Absolutely.
But for the visual arts, when you've got exhibitions on, you have to have somebody there. So that was definitely a challenge. So what was your question? Sorry, I got sidetracked.
Well, not at all, because I think volunteers are part of community building and collaboration as well. So I'm curious, just from your point of view, how building partnerships and building kind of community and collaborations helped in the early days of POW from the work you were doing.
Well, I was sort of in a very different situation to everybody else, because I did two things really. I was overseeing exhibitions that people had asked they wanted to do themselves. So I didn't have a lot of input into that, but I had to make sure that everything was working properly, you know. And being a curator myself, I have to admit there were some times when I went into an exhibition and thought, I think they might need some help with this. But I also did actually put on some exhibitions myself. So the first one was the one with Lana. The next one was an exhibition called Material Matters, which was a bunch of women who I knew who worked with materials, interesting materials. And then the third one, I brought in some women from outside of Thanet who were all of a certain age, and they were all painters, and that took place in the Viking Gallery. But actually convincing people that you don't have to have a gallery to have a visual arts exhibition. You can have it anywhere. And in fact, one of the things that never actually happened, but I would have loved to have done, was to have an exhibition actually outside, which could have been down even on the beach or wherever. Because there are actually some amazing areas around Thanet, even if they're a bit dilapidated, that's fine. In fact, that's even better, where you can use that space to create a really interesting exhibition. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. Chris, how about you? Any kind of reminiscences you want to share around collaboration?
Oh goodness, what more than I've already shared. I think what I was thinking just now, going right back to around 2015, 2016, was I think what affected me was I was expecting an awful lot of, I know we've mentioned that there have been a couple of negative comments on, the publicity at the moment, but I think what affected me was I was pushing at open doors, and I was surprised, because Thanet was, in the 90s, Thanet was really in the doldrums, and writing this regeneration strategy was an attempt to do something that gave artists the chance to help develop an area. And when you look now at the Turner Contemporary, which wasn't there when I worked for the council, I think for me it's about people realised, well, you know, venue managers, for example, realised actually we shouldn't be afraid of the arts at all. I was pushing at open doors. It was just somebody needed to come along and say, look, we can do this, this and this if you help us in that, that and that. So for me it was it was quite an emotional sort of, well, it was a surprise. I having worked for 10 years in an area that felt really, really dilapidated and everything felt like a struggle, except working with Iris, of course. It was the zeitgeist. Suddenly people were saying, yes, let's do something. And I didn't get any negative comments from a single of the men that I talked to about having this festival. And that was a relief.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just, I can only think of that at the moment off the top of my head. I'll think loads more tonight at midnight.
So we are going to come to a Q&A shortly, so start getting your questions formulated if you haven't been thinking about that so far. But before we do that, I'd love to hear from all of you around your perceptions of POW 10 years on. So we're here celebrating our 10th anniversary. It's our decade of dissent, as we're calling it. And Michelle, maybe I'll start with you and then we'll kind of work our way down the line. I would love to hear what your perception of POW is now. What are you most proud of?
As Chris said earlier, I mean, just the fact that POW's still going, it's not been the easiest decade with COVID, with, you know, so many other things that have happened where a lot of organisations have just kind of shrunk or disappeared. So the fact that it's still here, it's still going, it's testament to Chris and her idea, really.
The whole team as well.
Yeah, but you were the mother. But yeah, no, I think it's great. I mean, I went last year. I went along to the PEG exhibition and talk, and met Amy, and the joy, I think, as well. Yes. I think that's the other thing. People feminism, there's this whole feminist killjoy kind of thing, but the joy that people took from doing that. And I was also remembering the opening night for the first festival when we had the break dancers.
On in the beatboxer.
Yeah, and that energy and just
in the Turner Contemporary.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
in the main foyer, and I think that joy is really important.
Wonderful. Thanks, Michelle. Steph, what about you?
Yeah, I feel really similarly. I feel really proud of the start, but also the team that have enabled it to carry on, all of you that are here today, all the work that's gone in to mean that it's not just surviving, but it's thriving. And when you look at the programming, it's interesting, it's relevant, it's exciting. And one moment that actually made me cry was in lockdown when you guys had to switch to a fully digital program, and some of the young people from PI were performing. And I just watched some of the girls performing in this weird world that we were all in, and I just wept because it was so beautiful, and the fact that you managed to still find connection with people in that horrendous time was really moving to me.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
It's a bit difficult for me to comment, really, because I don't live here anymore. I moved about, just slightly over 2 years ago. But yeah, I mean, obviously it's great that it's still going, and that definitely is a testament to this lady. I don't really know what else to say. I just think it's great that it's still carrying on. I'd like to see a bit more visual arts going on, obviously. I'm a bit biased. But yeah, that's all I can say, really.
Thanks, Sarah.
Very nice.
Oh, all right then. I mean, everything that everyone said about, it continuing, but also for me, the way that it has kept the history of feminism going. I mean, it's great. We have this wonderful banner here, I Can't Keep Quiet, which was created by Tracy Peasley, along with women from the community, and alongside the one that Jessica Vorsanger created, which is on the other side, in the other room. And, we took those banners to London as part of the Artichoke procession in 2019 in celebration of the suffragette movement. And so for me, it's also about looking at those different phases of feminism, and that we're still continuing to do that. You know, there was the first phase of the suffragettes, and then we looked at the Greenham Common, the event that happened, I thought, at the Powell Cotton at Quex, must have been 2021, I think, 21, was excellent, was just so fantastic. And, you know, we're kind of again looking at another stage of feminism, and I think that's a really amazing thing that POW does.
Wonderful, thanks, Jen.
Could I ask a question? Did you get the title for this year from what's going on at the Turner, or is that just coincidental?
We came up with it.
Ah.
They got it from you.
Right.
Right. Do you have a relationship with the Turner?
Yes, we've done school projects with banners outside. Karen Moss went in and did collage workshops all about the history of the suffragette movement and using art as protest. So they created banners out there. We do have a relationship with Turner. We're doing performances there as well. But yeah, it's evolving.
Yeah.
This is why you've got to be in the room where it happens, right? Then you get the real tea. Right, Chris, do you have anything you want to say to kind of round us off in terms of 10 years on? What are you most proud of?
I'm just proud that you're still here.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had some lovely conversations with Rosanna, and I think you're doing a brilliant job. You know, when I left POW in about halfway through 2019, I think it was, it really felt like I had to put that baby down.
Mm-hmm.
And what I wasn't going to do was follow it up as you know, and behave as if you were sulky teenagers that had followed from the baby. So for a while, I had to basically seriously step away and just think, this is going to change, it's going to develop, it might not be, some of it might not be the way I like it. Actually, that's not happened. And I really applaud you, because this year's a wonderful programme. I've been to some fascinating music events at St Luke's in the past. I just hope that you can keep going for another 10 years at least, and just well done. And I do feel very proud.
So we have a few minutes for questions for this panel, and this group has not been together in person since 2020, so who knows when the next time might be that they'll be in person again. So this is your shot if you've got any questions. Yes, go on.
I have one. The banner is in Broadstairs, and little hailstones and 2 people. Did you have planning for this?
That feels like a setup, but I like it. I'm here for it.
Confidently no.
No, you're allowed public art as long as it's temporary, and those banners are definitely temporary.
I say to people, it takes the council 28 days to be motivated to do anything. It's always over Christmas with lights. Put them up, Christmas will be over, and then you can take them down.
Wonderful. Dina, yeah, go on.
It's kind of a big question.
Yeah.
It'd be really interesting to hear your kind of views on this. But I just picked up on a few things that you guys were saying, like the next phase of feminism, and how 10 years ago the doors were open for you to push. I mean, there's a lot of terrible stuff that's going on in the world at the moment. And I think that a lot of it is a backlash to feminism. And there's a lot of very angry white men at the moment that are feeling forgotten, and that they're not being looked after, and they don't see, it's like that term positive discrimination, people not really understanding how can it be positive with this discrimination and all of that kind of stuff. What do you think? Because I think that we need to do something about helping them see the way and helping them feel better about themselves as well. What do you think we can do as feminists to be able to help that next phase of feminism? I told you it was a big question.
I love that, though. Bring the fire. This is good. Does anyone want to tackle the next wave of feminism?
Well, Donald Trump is apparently an avowed feminist, I hear.
You heard it here first.
For me, I have a teenage son. Obviously, I'm quite worried about him being influenced by the manosphere, and we're all really well aware of all of this. But, I mean, International Women's Day is a socialist festival. I'm an anti-capitalist as well as a feminist, and I think that these things go together, racism, capitalism, and the patriarchy. So what we need to show men, and it's difficult, but is that we have more in common than what divides us, and actually it's the patriarchy and capitalism are bad for all of us.
Yeah.
That is a big conversation. It's not something that's going to happen straight away, but I think that's, that's bad for everyone. The only people who are thriving in this world are billionaires. And the world is set up for them. The rest of us, we're all the same. We're all under their boot. So this is where we need a revolution. And that's the conversations we need to be having, isn't it? And that is going to be difficult. But I'm always quite inspired by something I heard about where, what were they called? Malcolm X's, what are they called? Black Panthers, thank you. The Black Panthers started talking to these people who were called, I think they were called something like the Sons of the Confederacy, who were obviously Klan members and racists, lynchers. And when they actually sort of opened a dialogue with them, again, they realised that they were working class people and they had more in common than they thought. And so I think it's about that open dialogue. If you can get it. But also, I think one of the reasons why there's so much anger right now is this is the last throes of the patriarchy. And they are clinging on, they don't want to lose that power. So, yeah.
Because, and I think also I think it's important for us to challenge maybe the narrative that this is in response to feminism.
I agree.
Because ultimately that still puts women in blame. And I think actually what's happening is just the curtains being drawn back on what's actually already there. It's just that there's a bit of a fight for what feels like power, I think. And I think Michelle's absolutely right. I think the only way is to find common ground, and that has to happen very young. We need to be talking to our kids, and we need to be empowering them to have these conversations from very, very young, all the way through, I think.
Yes, I think that's 100% right. And I think, festivals like this are places where we can come together and be in conversation and be in open dialogue across the generations, across all sorts of gender identities, and really trying to take that intersectional lens. A lot of the work that POW does to work with young people is to ensure that we're encouraging these conversations at an earlier age. So I think being open about those dialogues is what's going to help kind of propel us forward. Love that question. It's gigantic and it's really important.
You have completely cheered me up because I've been very miserable about it, but the idea of it being their last throw of having to fight for power has made me think,
Exactly. That's what we're here to do. Bring the joy. Right. We probably have time for one more question, depending on the size of it. We'll see. Karina. Yeah, go on, Karina.
The first time that I heard about POW was probably through the lockdown digital kind of involvement, because I was still living in London then. And it was very weird to be looking at a festival in Thanet but being in London, and it had a lot of reach then. And I was, and it drew me in terms of the area of Thanet and knowing what was here. Where do you see the POW Festival getting that reach again and going a bit digital, and that might be the future, or do you think it's going to keep quite regional and still stay homely?
I'd like to say something about that because when I was reading your questions, something that came up for me was I live in Frome now, and there's a group of women who have created a relationship with some visual artists, Ukrainian, who aren't actually in Ukraine anymore. They've all left, but they wanted to draw attention to what was going on. And I think it would be great if you could make relationships with other women in other countries, and particularly war-torn countries, and get some sort of dialogue going on there.
I love that. I think that could be really powerful. It feels like something to do with art as well, perhaps.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
I mean,
Well,
it's
that's your background, isn't it, working with?
Absolutely. That's certainly an aspiration to have an international aspect of what we do. But of course, it's much harder now. I mean, but that's one thing where I think digital kind of really comes into its own.
Yeah.
Because, you know, with Brexit and climate change and, you know, the pandemic, kind of, it's so hard to tour art and expensive to tour artists internationally. But digitally, I think that's a really important thing to do. Yeah.
I can speak to our plan.
Yes, Rosanna, please.
Plan's independent, obviously. But POW is going on tour, so we are doing a Susie show actually. A couple of festivals ago, what we want to do is support creatives to create something for the festival and then enable them to be able to go on tour with it. So we're doing that this summer, and then the plan is to do some digital work, and there is some EU funding if you could do partnerships with other countries. So I've been trying to track down some feminist organisations in Germany, because there tends to be a lot of money there.
Yeah.
But yes, we do have ambitions to bring people into Thanet as well as take them out as well. So yeah, we just need that down funding. Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of the things that I wanted to do in this, and that Christina and we had this pact that we were both going to step down in 2019. And then we got closer and closer to it. I said, I don't think I can do it. I'm really sorry. I know this is breaking our pact, but do you mind if I stay on for another year? And she was very nice about it.
Oh, thank God, someone's got
So I did, and I really wanted to bring over a South African artist at that point, because I'd done a lot of work in South Africa and do some kind of exchange. But it financially, it was just too difficult. And then, of course, you know, we finished the 2020 festival 3 days before lockdown. So the 2020 festival it was a bizarre festival.
Anyone has connections with embassies, please let me know, because they all have we have a British art section to our embassy where someone goes and chooses all the British art to go in the embassies around the world. So I'm trying to get into embassies. It's got a link.
Right.
I think Steve said that, but I do, so couldn't have.
Oh, wonderful. See, this is how connections get made, right? We get in these rooms, you're in the room where it happens, right? And this is how connections get made.
Yeah.
Before we close out, I just want to touch on a couple of kind of key themes that I heard from you all this morning. I can't believe it's been an hour. Honestly, I could spend the entire day sitting and chatting with you all. But I think for those of us in the audience who might be thinking about movement building or might be thinking about kind of how we create change in the sectors and in the communities that we live in, first thing I heard is do your research. Do that darn research. And even if it doesn't feel sexy, even if it feels like it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of time, it's worth doing to figure out what it is that you need in order to create the change you want to create. I also heard a lot around perseverance and around no matter what the challenges are, whether that is putting up a banner in a blowing gale or trying to get funding as funding is being squeezed, to continue to persevere because of the strength of the mission feels critical in this moment. I heard a lot about trust. And it's so beautiful to see the relationship that has been sustained amongst you all and amongst those who are not able to be with us today as well, and then how that has filtered through the organization over the last 10 years to build these trusting relationships so that change can be realized.
Can I just say,
Yeah,
I'm sorry to interrupt, I think trust is a thing that women are better at.
Oh, yes,
I mean, do disagree if you
definitely.
think it's not right, but
Yeah.
we listen to each other and we don't think we've got to be the one that's talking for 5 minutes, and you know, we do. So I think it's something to take away that women are good at trusting each other. Sorry.
No, not at all. I think that I love that. I also heard a lot around the intergenerational aspect of working in the feminist movement and working with POW in particular, and also the intersectional aspect. So really thinking about how it is that the movements that we're building can bring together many different types of people, can be opening up conversations with people who might not feel invited to the movement, right? And bring them in a way that can open up that dialogue. And last but not least, joy. Have some fucking fun with it, because it is hard work. It literally says it at the back, right? It is hard work without bringing some joy. And I think that specific type of feminist joy, which I know Amy Redmond always talks about, is the kind of joy that POW really tries to evince with the work that we do. So to this incredible panel, thank you for your time this morning, and thank you for making